And do you think that unto such as you, a maggot-minded, starved fanatic crew, God gave a secret and denied it me? Well, well, what matters it? Believe that too. Omar Khayyam wrote these words to religious zealots, but the rejection by the intelligent of the less intelligent totalitarians, in all of their forms, holds true in a secular sense as well. Much of the criticisms of Trump are not actually criticisms of him in the normal way, but are more akin to pious indignation towards a blasphemy of some sort. I can't believe you just said that. How dare you say that? How could you possibly support this asshole? How wonderful of you to ask. I'll tell you why. Just yesterday, the conservative flagship magazine National Review published a bandwagon condemnation of Donald Trump in 22 parts by 22 famous conservative writers, starting with Glenn Beck, of all people, and including such names as Yuval Levin, Michael Medved, and even Thomas Sowell, who I otherwise like. They all gave differing reasons, but the main thrust of it was simply that he isn't really a conservative. Perhaps he's not, I don't know. Meanwhile, the progressive left, in general, has from the very beginning dismissed Donald Trump as a racist, a xenophobe, and an idiot and a joke. Mostly as a joke. Fox News doesn't like him, MSNBC doesn't like him, the magazines don't like him, the newspapers don't like him, other politicians don't like him, but the people do. Weird. Why on earth vote for him with experts like this turned against him? Now the charges continue. He is a business failure, we are told. He hates Mexicans and also Muslims. He's an egomaniac. According to Sowell, his very popularity among the public is a reason to distrust him. How then should a president win an election, Mr. Sowell? Hitler was popular, and so any popular politician is to be distrusted? Now, over the last several decades, the political and media establishment have proved repeatedly that their interests lie not merely outside, but in opposition to the interests of ordinary Americans. In business, in privacy, in culture, in law, everywhere. Now, on the face of things, the universal hatred of the establishment, both right and left, for Trump, is a prima facie justification to take interest in supporting him. None of the establishment criticisms even touch what's attractive about Trump, however, and that is that he is answerable to no one. He speaks his mind. Now, you might think this makes him dangerous, a man unanswerable to anybody else. But a mob is as dangerous, if not more dangerous, than a single individual. Democracy is what killed Socrates, after all. And it is what moved Plato in advocating the opposite extreme, which is a sort of totalitarian government under a philosopher king. An individual with no master is free to do what they think is best. For an egomaniac like Trump, because I do think that he is a bit of an egomaniac, what is best for the country will be what elevates his image, even in the face of public outcry from the professional offense takers. No one is taking them seriously anymore. Trump is killing them with the coy class of a master negotiator. And here lies the real crux of the matter. Trump is rejecting the gauntlet of bureaucracy that has metastasized in our legal system and our political system, most of it being checks against anything that would go against the interests of particular lobby groups. He did it by self-funding his campaign, he did it by laughing in the face of the politically correct thought police, also known as the fun police. And now the establishment experts of all stripes are conspiring together to prove as concretely as possible that Trump is not one of them. And we, the American people, are supposed to take this as a bad thing. I do not agree with Trump on everything. I think his support for the bailouts was a bad idea. I think his tolerance for the Patriot Act is awful. But I won't agree with any politician on everything, save maybe Augustus Invictus. Nor will any educated voter agree with, the viable candidates on everything. Unless you're voting for yourself, you have to think hard about the prescient issues and about your principles and about your values and about which among these, in any given time and in the context of the time, are the most important. You prioritize these, and then you vote for the candidate that will hopefully do the most good on the most important issues. For me, the only issue that truly matters, that really counts, is the ability of the public to participate in the political process. And by the public, I mean me, really. I want to be able to explore what I think is important, to think on what I observe when I explore, and to say what I think based on what I've seen, with no right of veto from anyone. And I can't imagine why anybody else wouldn't want this for themselves as well. Jefferson, when he debated Hamilton back in the day, conceded that Hamilton's industrialized plan for America was economically superior, which it was, but argued that nonetheless, an agrarian economy should be pursued because it encouraged responsibility and participatory interest in the new republic. Urban life, said Jefferson, made people dumb, lazy, and civically incapable, which is also true. It's also worth remembering that Rome survived and even thrived under the rule of some of the most atrocious and incompetent rulers in history, the Commoduses, the Neros, only when the people began to degenerate, to become distracted by mindless entertainment, petty grievances, hedonic pursuits over virtue, and, in short, ceased being civilians and became mere citizens. Ceased to become citizens and became mere civilians. Only then were the barbarians able to overtake the gates. Only then did the empire become unsustainable and collapse upon itself. No one candidate, not Trump, despite his slogan, not Hillary, not Bernie, not Cruz, no one candidate will make America great again. If anyone does, it will be we the people. We, the establishment, means more the same, and no change for the better, in just the further degeneration of the nation. Now, I had originally decided not to vote this election. It just didn't seem that relevant who ended up in office. Slight differences in policy, slight differences in tone, made thousands of miles away that would have no real significant impact on me, or at least compared to the other candidates who were running against them. I voted for Gary Johnson in 2012, and it was clear to me after that that no seriously different candidate would ever be electable, so why bother? But then Trump, genius that he is, somehow managed not only to maneuver his way into the presidential race, but into the lead, and in the face of both mainstream liberal and conservative opposition. Now, if your mind is now churning with ways to associate Trump with the establishment, or to say he's an idiot, or isn't something other than a genius, don't even bother. Right? He rejected the establishment, and by leadership of example, is doing the greatest thing to encourage, or at least to allow for, civic participation in generations. How's that, you may be asking? Well, in the last 2 to 3 decades, the progressive left, not to be confused with the proper liberals, has discovered and exploited a new method for moving the Overton window, that's the range of political views that are socially acceptable in public, into whatever direction that they want. And that method is the following. Whenever someone says something that they don't like, They dig through their history and find something that they said somewhere, sometime, that could, when taken out of context, possibly be interpreted as insensitive to some group. Then you call them a racist, a sexist, homophobe, xenophobe, transphobe, a bigot of some kind. And the research part is optional, of course. You don't actually need any evidence. Just repeat the allegation frequently, casually enough, and over time, the view becomes accepted by repetition alone. Well, don't believe me? Let's test it out. Everyone knows Rush Limbaugh is a racist who hates women, right? Go now and try to find one thing he said that is actually racist or sexist. Just one thing that is actually racist or sexist. Not something that could be interpreted as a microaggression against this or that group, because any sentence can be. Try to find one actually racist or sexist thing. Good luck. Now, once you've been accused of racism, or of sexism, or homophobia, etc., in a public context, you become a pariah. You become an outcast tarnished by hatred. No one even wants to investigate whether you are what they say you are, because why would you defend a racist? The allegation is the evidence. The claim is the proof. Try to find actual proof, and they'll go for you too. In this manner, the progressive left has wreaked havoc on and destroyed the lives of good and decent people with opinions that are popular and understood, but are nonetheless inconvenient to the left's worldview and to their goals, which are incidentally basically a nursery version of communism. Now, this method is used by leftists based on ideology. And they're obsessed and paranoid about discrimination. But it is also very convenient to large corporations because, in the words of Jack Donovan, their interests are everywhere. Their customers are everyone. They have no interest in alienating potential customers. They serve no one because they serve everyone. Like Nike, they want to play on every team. And again, such risks, being fired, being ostracized, and if the left gets what it wants, potentially fines and prison time like they are in Europe. Against all that, why bother even risking it? Why bother saying what you think? Why bother even exploring what's worth thinking where politics is concerned? If it just means risk and can only lead to trouble. Now, on the other hand, Trump, like Putin, doesn't play on every team. He puts his own nation's interests first. Perhaps Trump would do this because his ego demands a glorious representation in history. Personally, I'm okay with it, if the effects are positive. He's absorbed the outrage of the politically correct offense takers like a fire absorbs wood, and it is delightful beyond words to watch their outraged indignation turn into terror and incomprehension as the tactics that they use to wreck the livelihoods and the lives of so many other good and decent people not only fail, but make Trump bigger and stronger than ever. And by shrugging off the charges, he neutralizes them, or at least is beginning to neutralize the tactic. I won't talk about Trump's particular plans here. Suffice to say that they are all well-intentioned and legitimate ideas, regardless of whether I or anyone else holds them to be good or bad ideas. A conversation that I would like to be able to have. And that includes such things as deporting refugees, who are, let's be honest, immigrants and not mere refugees, or else deportation would be a matter of when and not if. That also includes increasing border security with Mexico. It includes expanding databases documenting Americans, both Muslim and non-Muslim. It includes a temporary moratorium on Muslim immigration, a power that is granted to the president within the Constitution, incidentally. What is the justification for this and that policy? Well, why don't you go ask someone who supports them? Ask me, perhaps, with the exception of the database thing. You might be surprised by how reasonable and how shockingly unmotivated by hatred these policies are when you drop the latent threat of wrecking someone's life and become curious enough to actually find out what other people think and why, rather than calling them names. Because at the end of the day, that's the lifeblood of our democratic constitutional republic. We're a nation of conversation as much as we are a nation of action. Without conversation, democracy fails. And when democracy fails, America will fail. It was designed that way. To be quite honest, I thought that it was pretty much done with, anyways. That we were over the edge, beyond hope of repair, and that we'd sort of gradually degenerate into a sort of large-scale version of Greece. But Trump changes things. While Bernie compulsively panders to impossibly stupid progressive causes like Black Lives Matter, and while Hillary and the conservative candidacy seem all enslaved to oligarchic interest groups, Trump stands alone in politics as a surprisingly free man. Now, this terrifies groups that like to see controllable politicians. Freedom is scary in itself, right? And other people's freedom, oh god, that's scarier still. Other people's freedom, it's so unpredictable. It's less secure because you don't know what they're going to do. But being free is the only way that I want to live. Free to explore what I want, to think what I want, to say what I want. And no maggot-minded, starved, fanatic crew of communists, of unimaginative conformists, or of baby boomers is going to tell me otherwise. They can go to hell. And should, if they don't like freedom. I hear the Middle East now has new space for new occupants. The conversation about what is good, what is noble, what is beautiful, what is pure, and what is true is the only conversation worth having. And political correctness by malignment is existentially opposed to the great and beautiful risk of thinking for yourself. No candidate is sufficiently armed to stop this force. There are too many moving parts with too much momentum. Except Trump.